My 11-year-old daughter hit puberty like a freight train and started acting like a grown woman. But when I found her iPad history at 2 a.m. showing dark romance novels and YouTube videos about how to make your voice sound sultry, I thought it was just early puberty stuff. Then I discovered Discord messages from Jake from basketball, who'd been telling her for 4 months that she was mature for her age and special, with exact instructions to meet him at Millennium Park while telling me she'd be at the library studying. Parents, how did it feel when your child turned into a walking disaster? My 11-year-old daughter started acting like a grown woman, and I thought it was just early puberty stuff. But then I realized something much darker was happening. My daughter was one of those girls who hit puberty like a freight train. 1 month, she was my little girl in Pokemon t-shirts. The next month, I was desperately searching the junior section because nothing in kids' sizes would button across her chest. She started noticing the attention before I could pretend it wasn't happening. We were at Target when she said, casual as anything, that the man in electronics had followed us to 3 different aisles. She didn't sound scared, just stated it like a fact, like she was telling me it might rain. It got bad when she started consuming content that no 11-year-old should even know existed. Her iPad history at 2 a.m. showed romance novels about CEOs and secretaries, bookmark folders labeled dark romance, and age gap. She'd discovered Wattpad, an archive of our own, reading explicit stories about innocent girls and men who know better. Her YouTube algorithm had shifted completely. Makeup tutorials for that clean girl aesthetic, how to look expensive, feminine energy that drives men crazy. She was watching videos about how to walk in heels, how to make your voice sound more sultry, how to flirt without being obvious. When I tried to stop her from consuming that content, she turned into someone I didn't recognize. She started using therapy speak to manipulate every conversation. I was gaslighting her when I set boundaries, being toxic when I said no to crop tops, emotionally abusive for taking her phone at night. She'd learned these words somewhere and weaponized them perfectly. Her friend group shifted overnight. The girls her age were suddenly so immature and childish. She gravitated toward 8th graders, then high schoolers who'd wave at her during pickup. Started lying with disturbing ease. She was at the library, but really at Starbucks with older kids, at Emma's house, but actually at the mall. She'd figured out how to delete specific texts while keeping others, clear only certain parts of her history, created fake contact names. Emma Mom was really someone named Tyler. She practiced her walk in her room. I could hear her heels clicking back and forth for hours. Started sitting differently, legs crossed like an adult, hand gestures while talking that she'd copied from somewhere. At family dinners, she'd insert herself into adult conversations about work drama and relationships, offering advice like she was 30. When we visited relatives, she spent the entire time with the adults, laughing at jokes she shouldn't understand, making comments about wine and coffee preferences she didn't have. The secrets multiplied like cancer. Her phone became Fort Knox. Password changed weekly. Face ID disabled so I couldn't use it while she slept. She'd angle the screen away reflexively. Muscle memory from constant deception. I found out from another mom that my daughter had been telling everyone she was 16, not 11, with a whole fabricated backstory about being held back. Started lying about everything. Library visits that were really mall trips with high schoolers, study groups that didn't exist, sleepovers at houses I'd never heard of. Her bedroom door stayed locked constantly, music blasting to cover phone conversations. She stopped talking to me entirely. Dinner became silent warfare, one-word answers while scrolling under the table. Her former best friend's mom called, concerned. Apparently my daughter had told the girl she'd outgrown their friendship. At her spring concert, she wore the required black dress, but she'd altered it somehow, taken in the waist, shortened the hem. She looked like a teenager, not an 11-year-old. As she walked across the stage, I watched fathers' heads turn and follow her movement. These weren't strangers. They were soccer dads, PTA volunteers, my neighbor. Their gazes lingered a beat too long before they caught themselves. But what disturbed me most was her awareness of it. She wasn't innocent to the attention anymore. She expected it and seemed to feed off it. After the performance, she didn't run to me like the other kids ran to their parents. She stood with the older performers, laughing at something on someone's phone. When I finally got her attention, she rolled her eyes and mouthed 5 more minutes, like I was embarrassing her. That night, I waited until she was asleep and took her phone. What I found made my blood run cold. A messaging app I didn't recognize. Discord. Hundreds of messages with someone called Jake from basketball. The profile picture showed a teenage boy, maybe 16. But reading through the conversations, something felt off. He was too understanding, too perfect in his responses. Your mom just doesn't understand that you're mature for your age. Parents always want to keep their daughters little girls forever. You're special, not like other kids your age. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I scrolled through message after message at 2 in the morning, the blue light from Lily's phone making my eyes water. Jake from basketball had sent her exact instructions for tomorrow, telling her to meet him at Millennium Park near the Bean at 2 p.m., to wear something nice, to tell me she'd be at the library studying. The profile picture showed a teenage boy in a Bulls jersey holding a basketball, but when I dragged it into Google's reverse image search, nothing came up, not a single match. My stomach dropped as I kept reading. Months and months of messages where he'd been telling her how special she was, how mature, how different from other girls her age. Classic grooming stuff I'd only read about in articles. I grabbed my phone and called the non-emergency police line with shaking fingers, but the operator just told me I'd need to come to the station with evidence since no actual crime had happened yet. I started screenshotting everything like crazy, sending them to my email, to the cloud, everywhere I could think of, while my brain brain raced between waking Lily up right now or waiting until morning. The messages showed Jake had coached her on exactly what to say, even gave her a script about needing to work on a group project for science class. At 6 a.m., I couldn't wait anymore and put the printed Discord messages right on the kitchen table while Lily poured cereal, watching her face go from confused to shocked to this cold, calculating look I'd never seen before. She grabbed her backpack and ran to her room screaming that I was toxic and violating her privacy, slamming the door so hard that our family photo from Disney crashed to the floor. I drove to the Naperville Police Department with my laptop and all the printed evidence while Lily refused to come out of her locked bedroom, my hands still shaking on the steering wheel. The desk sergeant took my report but said cyber crimes wouldn't be in until Monday, which was 2 days away, and I practically begged him to get someone, anyone, explaining the meeting was today at 2 p.m. A woman in jeans and a Northwestern sweatshirt walked over from the break room, introducing herself as Detective Monica Torres, saying she couldn't help but overhear. She looked at the messages on my phone, her face getting darker with each swipe, recognizing patterns she'd seen before. She told me she was off duty but had a 14-year-old daughter herself, and this couldn't wait until Monday. When I got home an hour later, Lily's window was wide open with the curtains blowing in the morning breeze and her bed was empty. A note on her pillow said, "Going to library, back by dinner." But when I checked Find My Phone, she was already on the Metro heading toward Chicago. I called Monica immediately and she put out a BOLO alert while I ran to my car, trying not to throw up. Monica called me at 11:30 while I was driving, explaining she'd run Jake's username through their database and found similar accounts linked to 3 other attempted meetings with minors in Illinois over the past year. She was heading to Millennium with 2 uniformed officers but needed me to keep texting Lily like everything was normal, not letting her know we knew about the meeting. I texted Lily that I'd pick her up from the library at 5, trying to sound casual, and she sent back a thumbs up emoji even though her location showed she was already at Millennium Park, an hour early for the meeting. Every part of me wanted to call her and scream at her to run, to get out of there, but Monica was still 20 minutes away and I had to trust her. Monica texted me a photo of where they'd set up near Cloud Gate, asking me to park 2 blocks away and stay in my car no matter what, which felt impossible when every instinct was screaming to run to my daughter. Through Find My Phone, I watched Lily's dot moving slowly through the park, stopping here and there like she was looking for someone, and I felt sick knowing she had no idea what she was walking into. At 1:47 p.m., her location stopped moving near the north entrance and stayed there for 3 full minutes. Monica texted that they had eyes on Lily sitting on a bench, checking her phone over and over, looking around nervously. Then she sent another photo and I saw him, a man in his 30s wearing a Cubs cap walking toward my daughter, and even from the grainy surveillance photo I could see Lily's body language change from excited to confused when she realized this wasn't the teenage boy from the profile picture. The man walked right up to her and sat down on the bench, pulling out his phone and showing her something on the screen, probably trying to prove he really was Jake. Monica's next text said they were moving in now, and I watched my phone screen like my life depended on it, refreshing the surveillance feed over and over. Well, someone's been speedrunning the How to Give Your Parents a Heart Attack tutorial with disturbing efficiency. From Pokemon to Predators in what, 6 months? That's some dark character development nobody ordered. The grainy footage showed Lily starting to stand up, looking confused and scared, and then the man's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. That's when everything exploded into motion with 3 officers rushing the bench, badges out, surrounding them in seconds. The man let go of Lily immediately and tried to walk away casual like nothing happened, but they had him on the ground in seconds, hands behind his back while one officer read him his rights loud enough that other people in the park stopped to stare. Lily stumbled backward and fell onto the grass, her whole body shaking as she watched the man she thought was Jake getting cuffed and hauled to his feet. I couldn't wait anymore and started running the 2 blocks to the park, my legs burning and chest tight, but I didn't care. When I got there, Lily was sitting with a female officer who had a blanket around her shoulders, even though it was warm outside. My daughter looked so small sitting there, rocking back and forth with her arms wrapped around her knees, all that fake grown-up attitude completely gone. She looked up when she heard me running toward her, and her face just crumpled completely. "Mom?" she whispered in this tiny voice that sounded exactly 11 years old, not the fake 16 she'd been pretending to be. I dropped to my knees and pulled her into my arms, and she grabbed onto me like she used to when she was little and had nightmares. Monica walked over carrying clear evidence bags with a phone and tablet inside, her face serious but relieved. She told me they'd need to take Lily to the station for an interview, but we could ride together and she'd be with us the whole time. The drive to the police station felt like hours, even though it was only 10 minutes. Lily pressed against my side in the back seat, not saying anything, just holding my hand so tight it hurt. At the station, they took us to a special room with soft chairs and pictures on the walls, not like the interrogation rooms you see on TV. A woman named Carol from Child Services was already there with a camera to record everything, explaining to Lily that she wasn't in any trouble, and they just needed to understand what happened. Monica asked questions so gently, letting Lily take breaks whenever she started breathing too fast. My daughter admitted Nathan had been talking to her for 4 months, telling her he was a basketball player whose parents were getting divorced and didn't understand him. He'd asked for photos, and Lily said she sent some, but nothing naked, just bathing suits from our vacation last summer. But I saw Monica and Carol exchange a look that made my stomach drop. The interview took 2 hours with 3 different breaks when Lily started hyperventilating, and each time she'd grab for my hand like she was drowning. Afterward, they had Lily meet with a crisis counselor while I sat in the lobby watching normal families come in for normal problems like stolen bikes and parking tickets. My phone kept buzzing with texts from my sister Grace asking if everything was okay, but I couldn't figure out how to explain that my baby had been 40 seconds away from being kidnapped by a grown man. 3 hours later, Monica came out with preliminary findings that made me want to throw up. Nathan Reeves was 34, worked as an IT consultant in Aurora, and had been using stolen photos of a real teenager named Tyler Morrison from Wisconsin, who had no idea his pictures were being used to prey on little girls. His devices had conversations with at least 12 other girls between 10 and 14, though Lily was the first one he'd tried to meet in person. Monica needed my consent to do a full forensic analysis of all Lily's devices, which I signed immediately, even though Lily started crying again about her privacy. That evening, we sat at the kitchen table with her iPad and phone in evidence bags at the police station. Lily looking smaller than she had in months, even though she was still wearing those too mature clothes. She kept apologizing in these tiny whispers, saying Jake told her parents wouldn't understand their connection, that age was just a number, that she was special and different from other kids. I made hot chocolate the way I used to when she was 7, with extra marshmallows and whipped cream, neither of us able to eat the dinner I'd tried to make. She held the mug with both hands like a little kid and asked if Jake was going to jail, still calling him Jake because she couldn't process that Nathan was his real name. That night, I lay in bed listening to her cry through the wall, fighting every instinct to go climb in bed with her like when she had nightmares as a toddler. Every notification on my phone made me jump, wondering if other predators had found her online, if there were more Nathans out there with her photos. I emailed her principal about needing an extended absence and started researching therapists who specialized in online exploitation, finding dozens in the Chicago area, which told me how common this nightmare was. Sunday morning, Grace drove through the night from Milwaukee after I finally called her, taking one look at my exhausted face before pulling me into the kind of hug that made me fall apart completely. While Lily slept, I told Grace everything, admitting I'd found the Discord app weeks ago but thought it was just for gaming with school friends. Grace works in software development and asked to see all of Lily's social media accounts, her face getting darker with each platform I didn't even know existed. She found accounts on Telegram, Kik, Snapchat with disappearing messages enabled, and a TikTok where Lily claimed to be 16 and lived in California. The digital footprint showed such a sophisticated understanding of hiding online activity that I realized how completely outmatched I'd been by my own 11-year-old. Grace started documenting everything for the police, creating a timeline of when each account was created and cross-referencing the dates with changes in Lily's behavior. Monday afternoon, Monica called with news that made me sick to my stomach. Nathan had made bail set at $50,000 with conditions including no internet access and staying away from minors, but that meant he was out there, only 20 minutes away in Aurora. The detective assured me he was wearing an ankle monitor and had surrendered his passport, but I started checking door locks obsessively, installing a new deadbolt and a chain lock that same day. The next morning, Lily sat on her bed in her pajamas when I went to wake her for school. She pulled her knees to her chest and shook her head when I held out her uniform. I could see the fear in her eyes as she whispered that everyone would know what happened. My heart broke watching her shrink into herself like that. I didn't have it in me to force her, so I called my marketing job and told them I had a family emergency. We spent the day on the couch watching old Disney movies she hadn't asked for in over a year. She curled against my side the way she used to when she was little. Every time a phone buzzed on the TV, she would flinch and press closer to me. That afternoon, we had our first appointment with Dr. Rachel Kim, the child psychologist Monica had recommended. Her office was nothing like I expected, with stuffed animals on every surface and art supplies covering a whole wall. Lily walked straight to a basket of markers and started drawing while the doctor explained how predators target girls like her. She said they look for early developers who feel different from their peers and validate their feelings of being more mature. Everything Lily had been going through suddenly made horrible sense. That night, Lily asked if she could sleep in my bed and brought Mr. Elephant from her closet. She'd hidden him months ago when she decided stuffed animals were for babies. Around 2 in the morning, I woke up to find her sitting up and staring at the corner where her phone charger used to be. She asked in this tiny voice if Jake would try to find her now that he was out on bail. I held her tight and promised he couldn't hurt her, but I wasn't sure I believed it myself. Tuesday morning, Principal Whitman called asking for a meeting, and his tone made my stomach drop. In his office, he closed the door and explained that several parents had been complaining about Lily's influence on their daughters. They said she'd been teaching them about dark romance books and sharing mature content on group chats. Some girls had started lying to their parents using techniques Lily had shown them. The principal showed me screenshots from concerned mothers of messages where Lily explained how to delete texts and create fake contacts. I realized with horror that Nathan's grooming had spread through her to other girls without any of us knowing. After the meeting, I walked to the parking lot to find Lily surrounded by 3 PTA mothers I recognized. Their daughters stood behind them while one mother screamed about Lily corrupting her innocent child with perverted stories. Another demanded to know what kind of mother lets an 11-year-old dress like she's 16. Lily was pressed against our car looking so small and scared. I pushed through them and put myself between my daughter and their anger. I told them their precious daughters were one message away from being victims too. I said Lily was groomed and manipulated by a grown man who's now facing federal charges. The confrontation drew a crowd of parents picking up their kids, and phones came out to record everything. Principal Whitman rushed out to disperse everyone, but the damage was done. By dinner, the school Facebook group had exploded with posts about that Harrison girl, and parents demanding the school do something. My sister Grace came over with her laptop to monitor the social media disaster, while I helped Lily with homework packets. Lily kept asking if everyone at school hated her now, and I didn't know what to tell her. Talk about your crash course in digital parenting. Finding out your kid has more secret accounts than a spy agency while dealing with a predator who thinks ankle monitors are the latest fashion accessory. And Grace's face got darker as she scrolled through comments calling Lily fast and questioning what kind of mother I was. Wednesday, Monica stopped by with an update that made everything worse. They'd found 4 other girls Nathan was grooming, including one in Indiana who had sent explicit photos. She needed Lily to do a video deposition for the prosecution to help make sure he couldn't hurt anyone else. Lily agreed, but her hands shook when she asked if she'd have to see him in court. Thursday morning, my phone rang and David's name made my blood run cold. He was screaming from Japan about learning everything from his mother who saw the Facebook posts. He said I'd endangered our daughter through negligence and his lawyer would be filing for emergency custody. After he hung up, I stood there shaking with rage and fear about losing Lily on top of everything else. That afternoon, Rachel held an emergency session teaching us breathing exercises for the panic attacks Lily had started having. She explained that Lily's brain was trying to process the betrayal of someone she thought loved her. Lily admitted she sometimes still missed Jake even knowing he wasn't real, and immediately looked ashamed. Rachel said that was normal because the feelings were real, even if the person wasn't. A week later, I was trying to work from my laptop at the kitchen table while Lily did her online classes in the dining room. Every few minutes, I'd look up to check on her and catch her doing the same thing, both of us jumpy and paranoid. The house felt wrong with all the blinds closed and doors locked 3 times over, but I couldn't shake the feeling that everyone was watching us. My sister Grace called that afternoon with news that made my stomach drop. She'd been digging into Nathan's online stuff and found something worse than we thought. He'd made fake Instagram accounts pretending to be popular girls from Lily's school who would comment on her posts with heart emojis and compliments. The accounts had full profiles with stolen photos and everything, making Lily think she had this whole friend group that didn't exist. He'd isolated her from real friends by making her feel like these fake ones understood her better. 2 days later, Monica called with another gut punch. Tyler's mom wanted to talk to me, the real 16-year-old whose photos Nathan stole. She was crying and angry on the phone, telling me how her son was getting bullied at school because everyone found out his face was used to trick little girls. Kids were calling him a predator, even though he was a victim too. She said she understood it wasn't our fault, but hearing the pain in her voice made me feel sick with guilt I hadn't expected. That same night, Lily's old friend Sophia texted me asking if Lily was okay, because her mom wouldn't let them talk anymore, but she didn't believe what people were saying about Lily being bad. I showed Lily the message and watched her face just crumble with relief that someone still cared about her. We sat together writing back, Lily telling me what to type while tears ran down her face. At therapy the next day, Lily finally opened up about why she'd been reading all that mature stuff online. She said the girls in those stories were confident and knew what they wanted, everything she didn't feel like even though her body had changed so fast. Rachel helped her see how Nathan had used that against her, telling her she was mature while keeping her dependent on him for validation. Lily drew during the session, angry black marks that slowly turned into something that looked like clouds. Things got worse when I went back to the office 2 weeks after Nathan's arrest. The receptionist handed me an envelope and I knew before opening it what it was. David was filing for custody, claiming the predator incident proved I couldn't supervise Lily properly. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely read his demands for full custody with supervised visits for me. My manager saw the whole thing and quietly suggested I take some time off to handle personal matters, which felt like another loss. I met with a lawyer my sister found who at least had some good news. David's case wasn't strong since he'd been absent most of Lily's life, but the predator situation didn't help my case either. She told me to document everything, including therapy attendance, working with police, new locks on the house, everything that showed I was protecting Lily. I realized I was fighting my ex-husband while trying to help my daughter heal from trauma I couldn't have prevented. The panic attack started when we went to Target for groceries. A man in a Cubs cap walked past our cart and Lily just froze, then started hyperventilating right there in the cereal aisle. I held her while people stared and whispered, telling her over and over it wasn't him. It was okay. She was safe. We left without buying anything, Lily apologizing through tears while I promised her there was nothing to apologize for. Monica called the next morning with more bad news. Nathan's lawyer was trying for a plea deal, claiming entrapment because Nathan never actually said he was a teenager in the messages. The prosecutor was confident but warned us this could drag on for months in court. I'd thought his guilt was obvious with all the evidence, but now it was something we'd have to prove while he walked around free on bail. The final straw came when Principal Whitman called asking for a meeting about Lily's education. She sat across from me explaining how several parents were threatening to pull their kids if Lily came back to school. She framed it as what was best for everyone if Lily stayed in the online program permanently. I knew it was victim blaming and pulled out my phone to record the rest of the conversation, remembering Grace's advice about documenting everything. Principal Whitman's face went red when she saw my phone recording, but she kept talking anyway, saying the board was considering my options and that homeschooling might be best for everyone involved. I left her office shaking with anger and called Grace right away, asking her her to look into whether the school could legally do this. Grace said she'd help, but first she wanted to show me something she'd been working on all week. We met at her apartment that evening, where she had her laptop set up with dozens of browser tabs open and printed papers spread across her dining table. She'd been digging into Nathan's digital footprint using some tech skills from her college days, and what she found made my stomach drop. 3 months ago, Nathan's IP address had accessed our school district's parent directory through some security hole that IT never fixed. He didn't just randomly find Lily online like we thought. Grace showed me the access logs where he'd specifically searched the database for single or divorced mothers with daughters between 10 and 14 who had active social media accounts. He'd been hunting, not stumbling across victims by accident. My hands were shaking as Grace printed everything out, and we drove straight to the police station where Monica was still working late on our case. Monica took one look at the evidence and immediately got on the phone with someone, using terms like federal jurisdiction and interstate crimes. Within an hour, 2 FBI agents showed up, and Monica explained that hacking into school systems changed everything from a local case to a federal one. The agent in charge, a woman named Sarah, warned us this meant way more attention on our family, but also way more resources to make sure Nathan never hurt another child. The next 3 weeks felt like months as the FBI took over the investigation and started building their case. During this time, Rachel suggested Lily might benefit from talking to other girls who'd been through similar experiences. Lily surprised me by asking if she could try an online support group Rachel had found specifically for young victims of online predators. I watched from the doorway as my daughter logged into her first video call, seeing 4 other girls around her age on the screen. For 20 minutes, Lily just listened as the others shared their stories. Then right before the session ended, she unmuted herself and said hi. Such a small thing, but it felt huge after weeks of her barely speaking. The FBI scheduled separate interviews with both of us the following week, and their questions were way more intense than anything the local police had asked. They wanted to know about every single app Lily had used in the past year, every website she'd visited, every online friend she'd made. Agent Sarah spent 2 hours with me going through our family's social media, pointing out details Nathan had mentioned in his messages that weren't public anywhere. She confirmed what Grace had discovered about the hacking, saying they'd found evidence of him accessing multiple school databases across 3 states. When I got home that afternoon, I found Lily in her room watching basketball videos on YouTube, but not the way you'd think. She had a notebook out and was making lists of all the things that should have warned her Jake wasn't real. Never mentioned specific teammates was at the top, followed by no photos with family, and always had excuses for video calls. I sat on her bed and gently closed the notebook, telling her that predators spend years learning exactly how to trick smart kids like her. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and asked why she didn't see it, and all I could do was hold her while she cried. 2 days later, everything exploded when David showed up at our house without any warning. I heard his rental car pull up and looked out to see him storming up the driveway, already yelling about taking Lily back to Japan with him immediately. The confrontation happened right there on our front lawn with half the neighborhood watching from their windows. He was screaming about me being an unfit mother, about how this never would have happened if Lily lived with him, about his rights as her father. Nathan hacked into school databases to shop for victims like some twisted version of online shopping where the product is vulnerable kids. That's a whole new level of planning that makes my skin crawl. Lily heard his voice from inside and ran to the bathroom, locking the door and refusing to come out even when I begged her through the door. David tried to push past me into the house, but I blocked him, my hand already on my phone ready to call 911. He finally backed off when I started dialing, but not before promising this wasn't over and that his lawyer would be calling. After he left, it took me an hour to coax Lily out of the bathroom, and she spent the rest of the night in my bed, something she hadn't done since she was 7. Grace came over the next morning with her laptop and a determination I'd never seen before. She spent 6 hours creating a detailed presentation for our custody lawyer, documenting everything about David's absence from Lily's life. 3 visits in the past year, each one lasting less than 48 hours. Missed birthdays where he sent money instead of showing up. Canceled holidays with last-minute business excuses. Child support payments that were consistently 2 to 3 weeks late. She also documented my response to the crisis with timestamps of every police report, every therapy appointment, every meeting with school officials. The custody lawyer looked through it all and said it was compelling evidence, but warned that family court could be unpredictable, especially with international custody issues. Rachel suggested we try a joint therapy session to address the guilt that was eating me alive. I hadn't realized how much Lily had picked up on my self-blame until we were sitting on Rachel's couch together, and Rachel asked me to share what I'd been feeling. I broke down explaining how I should have seen the signs, should have checked her phone more, should have known something was wrong. That's when Lily grabbed my hand and told me it wasn't my fault, that Jake had taught her exactly how to hide everything from me, how to delete messages and clear histories and lie about where she was. We both ended up crying on that couch, holding each other while Rachel handed us tissues. It was the first time since this started that I felt like maybe we'd get through this together. A month after Nathan's arrest, Monica called with news that made everything feel even worse. 2 more girls had come forward after seeing news coverage about the case, including one from 2 years ago who'd never told anyone until now. Monica asked if Lily might be willing to meet with them in a controlled setting, maybe at the therapist's office, to offer peer support since she was further along in her healing. I didn't know how to answer because while part of me thought it might help Lily to know she wasn't alone, I also wasn't sure my 11-year-old daughter was ready to be anyone's source of strength yet. The decision got made for us the next day when the FBI executed a search warrant at Nathan's apartment. Monica called me at work, her voice different than I'd ever heard it, telling me to sit down before she explained what they'd found. Nathan had what the agents called a trophy room, a closet where he'd printed hundreds of photos of his victims, including dozens of Lily. He had notebooks filled with details about each girl's personality, their vulnerabilities, their family situations, and plans for how he wanted to meet them in person. There were tickets purchased for flights to different cities, hotel reservations, even fake permission slips he'd created. I barely made it to the office bathroom before throwing up, my whole body shaking as I thought about how close we'd come to losing her forever. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of meetings and phone calls and paperwork that made my head spin. Lily's court-appointed advocate showed up at our door on a Tuesday morning, a woman named Karen with tired eyes and a folder thick with forms. She sat at our kitchen table and went through what would happen at the custody hearing, how David suddenly wanting to be father of the year after years of basically ignoring Lily meant the court had to at least listen to him. Karen kept saying things like best interests of the child and substantial change in circumstances, while Lily picked at the skin around her nails until they bled. The worst part was when Karen said Lily might have to talk to the judge alone, which made my daughter go pale and excuse herself to throw up in the bathroom. I found her later that afternoon in Grace's living room, sitting cross-legged on the carpet with Grace's laptop open between them, showing her neighbor how Discord worked and where kids hide apps on their phones. Grace was taking notes in a spiral notebook, asking questions about Snapchat and Telegram and apps I'd never heard of, saying she was putting together a presentation for the parent group at her church. Lily seemed different, teaching someone else, more confident, like maybe something good could come from all this mess. Grace's husband Tom made sandwiches while they worked, and for a few hours our house felt almost normal. Then Monica called with news that made me want to punch a wall. Nathan's lawyer had filed some motion saying the search warrant was bad, that they'd gotten it wrong somehow, and if the judge agreed, then all that evidence from his apartment might get thrown out. The prosecutor kept telling me not to worry, that defense lawyers always try this stuff, but I couldn't stop thinking about him walking free on some technicality. That night I ordered extra deadbolts from Amazon, then a whole security system with cameras, then motion lights for every corner of our yard. The guy from the alarm company looked at me weird when I asked about panic buttons for every room, but I didn't care. 6 weeks after Nathan got arrested, the school called saying Lily could come clean out her locker since she wasn't coming back this year. We went on a Wednesday when classes were in session, hoping to avoid people, but word must have gotten out because kids kept poking their heads out of classrooms to stare. The hallway felt a mile long with all those eyes on us, whispers following behind like smoke. Her locker was exactly how she'd left it. Pictures of her and her old friends taped inside, a magnetic mirror, her emergency tampons, a half-eaten granola bar. Her art teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, came out and hugged her tight, whispering something about being brave that made Lily's whole body shake. She held it together while we walked to the car, even waved at the secretary. But the second I started driving, she broke down completely, sobbing so hard I had to pull over twice on the way home. Tyler's mom called that weekend with something I didn't expect. She said Tyler wanted to help with the case, to testify about how Nathan stole his photos and what it's been doing to his life. She said meeting Lily and hearing about the other girls had helped Tyler understand he was a victim too, not just some random kid whose pictures got used. I could hear Tyler in the background saying something about wanting to help put Nathan away. We set up a video call for the next day, though I worried about how Lily would handle seeing Jake's face again. The call started awkward, Lily staring at her lap while Tyler cleared his throat a bunch of times. But then Tyler started talking about how kids at his school found out, how they called him catfish in the halls, how girls literally ran away when he tried to talk to them. He said his mom had to switch his schools, that he'd deleted all his social media, that he felt like Nathan had stolen his whole life, not just his pictures. By the end, they were both crying, and Lily kept saying she was sorry even though Tyler kept telling her it wasn't her fault, that Nathan was the only one who should be sorry. 2 months after the arrest, we had to go to court for the custody hearing. David showed up in a new suit with some lawyer who looked like he charged $500 an hour, talking about how he'd rented a bigger apartment and cut back his travel schedule. His lawyer painted this picture of me as some neglectful mom too busy with work to notice my kid was in crisis, while David was apparently father of the year just waiting for his chance to step up. My lawyer hit back with 3 years of missed birthdays, ignored phone calls, and child support payments that came whenever David felt like it. The whole time Lily sat outside on a bench, biting her nails down to nothing, her leg bouncing so hard the floor shook. The judge called Lily into her chambers alone except for the court reporter, and those 40 minutes felt like 40 hours. She came out with red eyes but her chin up, walking straight past David without looking at him. The judge said she'd make her decision within a week, but ordered that Lily would stay with me until then. No changes to the current arrangement. David stormed out yelling that this wasn't over, while Lily just asked to go home and sleep. We started new rules after that, trying to find some kind of normal. No phones or tablets in bedrooms, everything charged in the kitchen overnight. Sunday became our digital detox day. No screens at all, just board games and cooking and walks around the neighborhood. Grace started teaching Lily coding over video calls, Python basics that Lily picked up faster than I expected. The house felt weird without constant notification sounds, too quiet sometimes, but also calmer. Lily started reading actual books again, checking out stacks from the library, though I noticed she picked ones about girls surviving bad things, fighting back, getting stronger. Then Monica called with news that made my stomach drop. Nathan's motion got denied, which was good, but he'd hired some big-shot defense lawyer known for making victims look like the bad guys. The prosecutor warned us to get ready for them to attack Lily's character, to twist everything to make it seem like she wanted this to happen. Like an 11-year-old could somehow be responsible for a grown man's crimes. Grace showed up that weekend with her laptop bag and a determined look on her face, pulling me into the kitchen while Lily was upstairs. Grace showing up with her laptop bag, and that look means business. This woman went from learning what Discord was to becoming the neighborhood's tech-savvy crusader against online predators faster than you can say parental controls. She opened her laptop and showed me lines of code that meant nothing to me, but then she clicked over to a simple interface with big buttons and clear labels. She'd been working on this app for months, something that could help parents monitor their kids' devices without being too invasive, with filters that caught grooming language patterns and suspicious age gaps in conversations. She wanted Lily's input on what would have actually helped, what wouldn't have made her just hide things better. I watched my daughter sit at the kitchen table, pointing at the screen and suggesting features like alerts for location spoofing and fake profile detection, her voice steady as she explained how predators operated based on her own experience. 10 weeks had passed since Nathan's arrest when Rachel, Lily's therapist, called me in for a parent session. She showed me her notes from their sessions, pointing out the progress markers like maintained eye contact, decreased panic attacks, and Lily finally expressing anger at Nathan instead of blaming herself for being stupid. The online school was working better than expected, though Rachel said we'd need at least a year of therapy, maybe more, and my insurance was already sending letters about coverage limits. The custody hearing came 3 days later, the judge reading his decision in a monotone that made my heart pound. Joint legal custody would continue, but I'd keep primary physical custody, with David getting supervised visits that would eventually build to weekends. His lawyer was on his feet immediately, saying they'd appeal, but I felt my shoulders drop with relief because at least Lily would stay home with me. The prosecutor's office called Lily in the next week to prep her testimony, explaining she could testify through closed-circuit TV from another room. The prosecutor, a woman who looked like she hadn't slept in days, walked Lily through what would happen, warning her that the defense would try to confuse her or make her feel guilty, that they might ask about her clothes or her social media posts. Lily took notes in a spiral notebook, treating it like studying for the most important test of her life, asking questions about legal terms and writing down the answers. Then Monica called with news that made me want to throw something. Nathan had been caught at a public library using their computers, violating his bail conditions, and was immediately rearrested. The judge revoked his bail completely this time, which meant he'd stay locked up until trial, and Monica said this actually helped our case because it showed he couldn't control himself, couldn't follow simple court orders. David's first supervised visit happened at a family center that smelled like old carpet and disinfectant. The social worker sat in the corner taking notes while Lily answered David's questions with one-word responses, her posture rigid in the plastic chair. When David started criticizing how I'd handled the situation, Lily's head snapped up and she told him he didn't get to judge when he'd been gone for months, when he'd chosen work over being there, her voice sharp enough to make him step back. 3 months after Nathan's arrest, Lily asked if she could try an in-person support group for teen survivors that met at the community center downtown. I drove her there on a Tuesday evening, watching her walk through the doors with her shoulders squared like she was going into battle. When she came out an hour later, her eyes were red, but she had the first real smile I'd seen since May, and all she said was that she wasn't the only one, that other girls had been through this too. The FBI agent called with an update that made my stomach turn. They'd found evidence that Nathan had targeted girls in Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana, and Iowa over 5 years, with at least 12 confirmed victims so far. The federal prosecutor wanted to know if Lily would testify in federal court too if needed, and before I could say no, before I could protect her from more trauma, Lily grabbed the phone and said yes. She wanted to help stop him from hurting anyone else. My manager called the next morning about my leave of absence running out, her voice apologetic but firm. I hadn't been able to focus on marketing campaigns or client meetings while my daughter's trauma was being discussed in Facebook mom groups and Nextdoor posts, while reporters kept calling for comments. She offered a severance package with 6 months of health insurance continuation, and I accepted immediately, knowing I needed to find remote work that would let me be there for Lily. Grace came over with her laptop again, this time to help me update my resume and LinkedIn profile while Lily did homework at the same table. It felt almost normal for a minute until Lily looked up and asked if we were poor now, if she was the reason I lost my job. I told her we'd be okay, that some things mattered more than money, and she nodded before saying she could sell all those expensive clothes from before, the ones that made her look older, if we needed the money. But I told her that was her choice to make when she was ready. 4 months passed in a blur of prep meetings and court dates until finally the state trial started with jury selection. I sat in the hard wooden benches of the courthouse watching Nathan walk in wearing a navy suit and clean-shaven face, looking nothing like the guy in the Cubs cap from the park, while stayed home with Grace, texting me updates about Lily's mood every hour while I watched potential jurors file in and out. The prosecutor pulled me aside during a break and warned this could take days because finding 12 people who wouldn't blame an 11-year-old for being groomed was harder than it sounded. 2 days later, we had our jury and the real trial began. Lily testified from a small room down the hall with a camera while I watched on a monitor in the gallery, my hands gripping the bench so hard my knuckles went white. Her voice came through steady and and clear as she explained how Jake made her feel special and understood and mature for her age. The defense attorney kept trying to suggest she pursued the relationship, but Lily just kept saying she was 11 and he was an adult who lied about everything. I'd never been prouder of my daughter than watching her refuse to let them twist her words. Tyler took the stand next, this skinny 16-year-old kid from Wisconsin whose photos Nathan had stolen from his mom's Facebook page. He explained how his whole life got turned upside down when girls at school started saying they'd been talking to him online when he'd never met them. The defense tried suggesting he was partly responsible for having photos online, but Tyler shot back that victim blaming wouldn't work here. Several jury members were nodding as he spoke, and one woman was wiping her eyes. The next day brought testimony from 3 other girls via video link from different states: a 13-year-old from Ohio whose parents were divorced, a 12-year-old from Texas who developed early like Lily, a 16-year-old from Florida who Nathan had tried to meet 2 years ago. Their stories were so similar it was scary, all isolated from friends their age, all told they were mature and special, all gradually pushed toward meeting in person. The girl from Florida broke down describing the years of therapy after Nathan showed up at her school claiming to be her cousin. Against his lawyer's obvious frustration, Nathan decided to testify on day 4. He sat there in his suit claiming he thought Lily was 16 based on her photos and how she talked, acting like the victim of some misunderstanding. The prosecutor destroyed him piece by piece with his own messages, reading out loud where he mentioned her 5th grade classes and 11-year-old friends and elementary school events. Nathan's face got redder with each question until he snapped at the prosecutor about twisting his words, and suddenly the whole jury saw the real predator under the clean-cut act. During lunch break, I went to the courthouse cafeteria for coffee and found myself face-to-face with an older couple I recognized from the gallery. Nathan's mother approached me with tears streaming down her face, apologizing over and over for what my family went through. She started telling me how Nathan was abused as a child by a neighbor, like that somehow explained everything, like that made it okay. I set down my coffee and walked away without saying anything because there was nothing to say. The closing arguments on day 5 painted 2 completely different pictures of what happened. The prosecution showed a calculated predator who studied his victims and picked the vulnerable ones, while the defense claimed a lonely man who made mistakes but never meant real harm. Lily watched from home with Rachel, texting me that the defense attorney was gaslighting everyone by acting like Nathan was somehow the victim. The jury went to deliberate that afternoon and didn't come back. 3 days of waiting nearly killed me. I couldn't eat anything but crackers, couldn't sleep more than 2 hours at a time, kept checking my phone every 30 seconds for updates from the prosecutor. Lily seemed calmer than me, sitting on the couch doing homework and saying she told the truth and that's all she could do. We watched movies neither of us paid attention to, just existing in this weird space between testimony and verdict, between our old life and whatever came next. Thursday afternoon at 2:47 p.m., my phone rang with the prosecutor saying they had a verdict. I drove to the courthouse with shaking hands while Weil brought Lily to her mom's house to watch on the news. The foreman stood up and read guilty on all counts: child enticement, attempted kidnapping, possession of child exploitation material, and criminal hacking. I collapsed forward in my seat sobbing while around me other parents from the video testimonies were crying too. Tyler dropping truth bombs on the defense team while representing every stolen identity victim out there. This kid turned his nightmare into pure courtroom gold, making jury members reach for tissues and the defense lawyer reach for excuses. Nathan showed zero emotion as they cuffed him and let him out, just stared straight ahead like none of this was real. Weil called me from her mom's house sobbing with relief, and I could hear Lily in the background asking if it was really over. 6 weeks until sentencing, the judge announced, with victim impact statements scheduled for anyone who wanted to speak. That night, Lily told me she wanted to face Nathan in person this time, to tell him exactly what he stole from her childhood. Rachel started working with her the next week, practicing her statement over and over until she could say it without her voice shaking. I watched my daughter finding her voice again, stronger than before, ready to speak her truth. David showed up at the support group family day 3 weeks later, looking smaller than I remembered in the church basement circle of folding chairs. Rachel had warned me he was coming, but seeing him sit there with other parents while Lily watched from across the room made my chest tight. When his turn came to share, he stared at his hands and said he'd blamed me because admitting he wasn't there to protect his daughter meant admitting he'd failed her too. Lily didn't say anything, but when the session ended, she let him hug her for maybe 2 seconds before pulling away. 6 months after Nathan's arrest, I was scrolling through job listings when an email came through about a remote marketing position with a company that made parental control software. The owner's daughter had been groomed online 5 years ago, and she wanted someone who understood the stakes. The pay was $30,000 less than my old job, but it came with flexible hours and actual purpose. Lily helped me set up for the video interview, adjusting my laptop angle and fixing the lighting like she'd done it 100 times before. Sentencing day came in late November with the federal courthouse packed with families from 7 different states. Lily wore the navy dress we'd bought together and walked to the podium without shaking. She looked straight at Nathan and told him how he'd stolen her trust in adults, her sense of safety, her ability to just be a kid. Her voice stayed steady when she said he'd failed because she wasn't broken. She was healing, and he'd rot in prison while she rebuilt everything he tried to destroy. Nathan's face twisted with actual rage at being challenged by a child in front of everyone. The judge took 20 minutes to read through all the charges before sentencing Nathan to 20 25 years federal time with lifetime supervision and sex offender registration. His lawyer immediately filed an appeal, but the marshals cuffed him right there. As they let him out, Nathan stared at Lily with such pure hatred that I stepped between them without thinking. Monica walked us out through the back entrance, telling us Lily was the bravest witness she'd worked with in 15 years. In the parking garage, Lily completely fell apart, not from sadness, but from everything she'd been holding inside finally breaking free. She kept saying it was over while I held her in the back seat, both of us knowing that wasn't really true, but needing to believe it anyway. We drove home with the radio playing songs from before everything changed, neither of us able to speak. A week later, Rachel warned us about what she called the post-trial crash, when all the adrenaline disappears and you're left with the actual trauma. She was right, because Lily started sleeping 14 hours a day, and I'd find myself crying while making coffee or folding laundry. We stopped trying to be okay and just let ourselves feel destroyed for a while. Grace came by with her finished app called Guardian Angel that monitored kids' online activity without being invasive. She'd listed Lily as a consultant with 2% of any profits going toward her college fund. Lily managed a tiny smile and said maybe she'd study psychology to help other kids who went through this. The principal called saying the school board had reviewed everything, and Lily could return for 6th grade if she wanted. Several parents had actually advocated for her after the trial coverage showed what really happened. Lily wasn't sure she was ready, but having the choice meant something. Then I found out through Grace that David had been telling people at his country club that I'd allowed a predator to target our daughter, and he was seeking sole custody. His lawyer had filed the paperwork, and we had a hearing scheduled for next month. After everything, after the conviction and the evidence and Lily's testimony, I was still having to prove I was a good mother. Grace helped me gather documentation showing how David had minimized everything, refused to attend therapy, and kept insisting Lily was being dramatic, even after Nathan's conviction. The federal prosecutor called while I was organizing all those papers, saying Nathan's appeal had been fast-tracked, and they might need Lily to testify again if it went to appellate court. I wanted to scream that she'd been through enough, but Lily overheard and walked into my office. She looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before and said Nathan doesn't get to win by wearing her down, that she'd testify as many times as it took to keep him locked up. 3 weeks later, we sat in the family court waiting room while David's lawyer shuffled papers and my ex-husband wouldn't look at us. The judge called us in and started reviewing everything from Nathan's trial, the social worker's reports from David's supervised visits, all the documentation Monica had helped us gather. David's lawyer stood up and argued that my negligence had enabled the whole thing, that I should have known what Discord was, should have monitored Lily better. The judge turned to David and asked him directly what he would have done differently in my situation. He opened his mouth, closed it, stammered something about parental controls, then admitted he didn't even know what Discord was until after Nathan's arrest. His whole case fell apart right there in that moment. The judge's ruling came swift and harsh, denying his appeal completely, stating that my immediate response to the crisis showed excellent parenting under extreme circumstances. She ordered David to complete online safety education and co-parenting counseling before any unsupervised visits could even be considered. He left without saying a word to either of us, his lawyer muttering something about further appeals as they walked past. 2 days later, Monica called while we were eating dinner to tell us Nathan's federal appeal had been denied too. The conviction would stand, all 25 years of it. She mentioned almost casually that he'd been attacked in prison last week, was in protective custody now, might stay there the whole sentence. I waited to feel something, anything, but there was just emptiness where the anger used to be. Lily processed it differently, saying quietly that maybe now he knew what it felt like to be vulnerable and afraid of someone bigger and stronger. The last week of school arrived and Lily decided she wanted to try going back, just a test run before fall. I walked her to the entrance where Sophia waited with a poster board sign covered in glitter that said, "Welcome back," with hearts all around it. Kids stared, some whispered behind their hands, but a few waved and smiled. She made it through the half day, coming home exhausted but proud, collapsing on the couch and telling me she did it. She actually did it. Summer came different than any summer before, 8 months since that night in Chicago, and Lily signed up for theater day camp where nobody knew her story. I sat in the back row of their little show watching her sing some song about believing in yourself, laughing with the other kids about forgotten lines and wrong notes, looking exactly like what she was, an 11-year-old girl having fun. Normal moments felt like miracles after everything we'd been through. The survivor advocacy group contacted us about speaking at their family safety event, and Lily said yes before I could worry about whether she was ready. She wore her old Pokemon shirt that she'd hidden in the back of her closet for months, standing at the podium for just 5 minutes talking about how predators make you feel special and grown up, but it's all lies. Parents came up afterward with tears in their eyes, saying they went home and checked their kids' phones that very night, found apps they didn't know existed. We started visiting David for his supervised sessions at the family center, watching him slowly build something with Lily he'd never had before. During one visit, he actually apologized, not for the custody battle, but for being the kind of father who wouldn't have noticed something was wrong, who traveled so much he didn't know his own daughter. Lily didn't say she forgave him, but she taught him about Discord, showed him how predators operate online, explained what grooming looked like. The 1-year anniversary arrived quiet and heavy, Lily having nightmares the whole week before, waking up crying about things she couldn't quite remember. I took the day off and we visited Rachel first, bringing flowers to thank her again for everything she'd done for us. Then we got ice cream even though it was barely noon, afternoon, saw some silly animated movie, held hands in the dark theater like she was 5 again. That evening, she went through her phone and deleted the last pictures from her grown-up phase, the ones where she looked 16 instead of 11, saying she wanted to remember who she really was, not who Nathan tried to make her become. September brought 7th grade at a new school across town where she was just another kid in the hallway, not that girl from the news. She made friends slowly, joined art club, kept her phone in her backpack during classes without anyone having to tell her. Dropping her off that first morning, watching her disappear into a crowd of kids all wearing too much body spray and trying to figure out their locker combinations, the ordinary beauty of it made me cry right there in the parking lot. The judge really said, "Let me end this man's whole custody argument," and David basically testified against himself. Nothing like watching someone realize they don't even know what Discord is while trying to blame someone else for not knowing. Saturday morning, I found her in the kitchen making pancakes from scratch, something he therapist taught her as a grounding exercise when anxiety got bad. We ate breakfast together, talking about normal things like school play auditions next week, this boy in art class who was kind of cute but totally immature, whether we should finally get that dog she'd been asking about since she was 8. Outside our window, neighbors walked their own dogs, carried groceries, lived their own complicated lives with their own secrets and struggles. My phone buzzed with some notification, and neither of us flinched anymore, that learned panic response finally fading after months of safety. We weren't the same people we'd been before Nathan, would never be those people again. Too much had happened, too much had been taken and learned and survived. But sitting there eating pancakes on a regular Saturday morning, Lily laughing at some video on the approved YouTube Kids app, sounding exactly like the 12-year-old she was supposed to be, I realized that was enough. We'd survived the worst thing I could imagine, we were healing one day at a time, and we had all the time in the world to figure out the rest. Look at them taking back Saturday mornings with pancakes and a little crush talk, proof that therapy comes in all kinds of flavors. If you made it to the end, drop a comment. I love reading all your comments.